You're listening to Ace Podcast Nation, the hottest new podcast network and YouTube channel in the UK, featuring original series, top guests, expert analysts, and more. Check out facebook.com/Acecast Nation for news on latest guests and shows. Watch every show in full at youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation.
Yes lads, UFC Fighter Jack Show here. You can catch me on the latest episode of Ace Podcast Nation. Make sure to give them a subscribe on YouTube. It's youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation, and looking forward to get back on there soon. Speak to you soon.
Hey guys, I'm Si. Welcome to Ace Podcast Nation and welcome to the Danny Batten Show. This is episode 56. This is the Danny Batten Fight Show. We're going to talk a little bit of latest news. We're going to have a look at last night's boxing, and then we're going to do a little retro review of UFC 11. So those of you who followed the show from the start, I guess, when we had the first lockdown, we did some retro reviews. We started at UFC 1 and I think we made it to UFC 10. Or 10 and a half, I think it is. And then we get up to UFC 11. We're going to, as I say, talk about the boxing from last night, some other little news pieces, and yeah, we'll have a little chat. But Happy New Year to everybody. And of course, as usual, you can catch this show and all the other shows we do on Ace Podcast Nation. Video versions, youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation. And the audio versions at all your usual podcast and radio platforms. But with no further ado, let's bring in the man himself. He is an ex-Cage Warriors world champion. He's fought all over the world. And he is the co-host of the Danny Batten Fight Show. It is Mr. Daniel Batten. How are you?
Right, so hello listeners. I hope you all had a good new year. Let's hope it's a better one than last one. Shouldn't be hard to beat. Shouldn't be hard to beat at all.
Could not be worse, mate. Could not be worse. So I apologise to people if I'm like looking around a bit. It's because I'm trying a new camera angle and a new camera, so I'm a bit like not used to where it is, but we'll get there. We'll be all right. But yes, so we're going to talk last night's boxing, mate. But there's a few little news bits first. We'll go through. British boxing has been suspended until the end of January, at least after an increase in COVID-19 cases. I mean, I don't know about you. I'm not surprised there's an influx of COVID cases after Christmas. I was expecting it. We've been in Tier 4 in Wales since before Christmas, just before, and I know you just said you're in Tier 4 now.
Yeah.
It's strange, like the normal people, like yourself and me, we seem to have been ready and expecting the increase in cases. The people who run in the country and making the decisions don't seem to be prepared for it.
Yeah, I think everyone feels the same. They feel that the government clearly don't know what they're doing. But you know, I get at the beginning, no one really knew what extent this was going to have an impact on a country and on the world. But you know, now we pretty much know what it's all about and what's got to be done. It just needs to have one real hard lockdown. As frustrating as it is, because I think this is just aggravating everyone. It's like bandaging up a wound and then unwrapping it before it heals properly and injuring it again. It's just aggravating.
I think one of the big problems with it, without getting all into politics and stuff, is like every lockdown, every time you do a Tier 4 style lockdown where businesses, non-essential stuff closes, is more and more businesses are losing money, more and more businesses are going out of business. And I think it's all very well saying, oh, you know, you get this money and you get this money if you're self-employed, like, but that doesn't last forever. And like people are losing houses. The mental health the mental health implications on people, I think, are getting greater and greater. They've got to find a better way to manage it. But then equally, if the cases keep rising, it's difficult to say, oh, do this or do that, because you just don't know. Like, I know my particular area, there's a massive increase in cases over the last few weeks, but it is what it is. Boxing, I'm not surprised that they've just said, give it a month. But it has put off some big fights. There was a European bantamweight title fight between Karim Garifi against Lee McGregor and Josh Kelly versus Russian David Avanesian for the European title fight are both going to be off because they were in January. It is what it is. Eddie Hearn has done a tremendous job I say Eddie Hearn. Predominantly, Eddie Hearn has done a very good job of getting boxing on at all. So I think they just like we said with Cage Warriors and UFC, mate. They deserve credit for getting it on, and I'm sure they'll get it on as soon as they can once this suspension is lifted by the powers that be.
Yeah, they've not got any finances. I mean, it's obviously people with a bit of capital behind them that can pull it off under these very uncertain times.
Well, it was in garden, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, UFC have really led the way. Cage Warriors follow suit in similar fashion. But fair play to Contenders. Contenders managed to get a show on last year, and that was a bit different. It was all done with viewing from a car park, like the old cinema drive-thrus. But, it worked, and it got an event on. So, there's no reason why boxing can't get it together and put on some regular feature fights. Why not?
Indeed, you'd like to think so, mate. It's going to be interesting what happens over the next year from many different perspectives, I suppose, from fighting to other sports and beyond, and just day-to-day life, mate, I suppose, as well. But moving on to MMA, I saw a quote from Chaos Williams yesterday. He said he felt that he deserved the win over Michel Pereira at the last UFC of 2020. He said he did. He said Pereira did more dancing than damage, but I don't think necessarily when he goes to the judges, it's not necessarily about the damage done, is it? Always, it's about intent, positions. There's a whole lot of different stuff, and I thought Chaos Williams lost. I gotta be honest.
I think
to win.
I think likewise, but the guy obviously has got such desire to win that unfortunately that desire gets so much it gets deluded in one's mind. But it was a close affair, initially, but not close enough for it to swing the other way. The issue with going the distance with Pereira is the fact that he's so visual that other people look like they're stuck in the mud in comparison. So rounds can slip away so easily. But the times it went to the ground as well, though, Chaos was underneath, if I remember rightly. So, that's not going to look good either. But Chaos is definitely a star in the making. I think he's going to have a fantastic career. But he just shouldn't look back now. He should only look forward. And it won't do nothing for him being sore and about the loss. He's really on top of it. Yeah, and he's been looking amazing lately, though. He really, really has. Physically, his performance is now a little bit more educated. He's not so crazy. Sometimes his flamboyancy led him to lose through his gas tank running out. But he's getting it together.
Much in terms of time, though, Eddie. Like, he hadn't been tested much outside of a minute or two, which is a problem. Another one who did superbly well was Rob Font. He looked so impressive in the same show when he beat Marlon Moraes, and he kind of in the recent interview kind of said, "I told you so." People, I think, obviously thought Moraes was going to beat him, and he lost, and not just lost. I thought Rob Font looked so good. I was really, really impressed with how he looked in that fight. Ultimately,
I would like to see Font tested a little bit more. I know that sounds crazy with the type of opponent we just see him beat, but he's not looked good for a little while, and I just think he's no longer looking complete. I think there's too many chinks in his armour, and I think a lot of the top guys will find that chink, and Font was just proving to be one of them. I would like Font to be more well matched all round to see whether he really has stepped up. I'm not saying I doubt it by any stretch. I just think, for me, for confirmation, I want to see Font go up against another top tier guy and see how he performs there. But yeah, I think he's well up there. He's well up there and doing well.
Indeed. Paulo Costa's manager calls for an interim fight, the interim title fight between himself, Costa and Robert Whittaker, while Adesanya fights Blachowicz. That's a fight which I'd quite be on to see.
Yeah.
I think we discussed it a little bit last week as well. I think we mentioned it in potential fights that could be happening.
I think that would be sensible because it keeps things moving. It keeps interest in that division. Why other things happen, because that is the issue when someone goes up a weight, isn't it? It can leave everyone sort of like waiting in the queue, so to speak. But yeah, it keeps things going. It keeps the interest going in that division. I think that's a really good thing, and that's a fight actually I really want to see.
Yeah, for sure. UFC wants to do Jorge Masvidal versus Colby Covington in 2021, according to Dana White. That's another one that I'd really like to see. Did you hear the news as well that Chimaev versus Leon Edwards is off again?
I know, craziness.
I'm wondering if this is going to be the new Ferguson versus Khabib, and we're just never going to see it.
It comes to mind.
They are looking for someone else to fight Leon Edwards, which I'm happy about. It looks like Neil Magny's thrown his name into the mix, but ultimately, so frustrating. I was so looking forward to that fight. Jon Jones says he's got no intention of fighting ever again at light heavyweight. Now that interests me because clearly they've been really pushing up or playing up the fact him and Adesanya fighting. So if he's saying that, either Adesanya's fighting a heavyweight or I suppose they could do it at catchweight. But then you can't have a title on the line. So it's all very interesting. Will he change his mind if Adesanya gets his old belt? Probably, in my opinion. I think he will, because his ego will take over.
Yeah, I think it's Dana White. It is the one that says that when you start talking figures, it changes people's opinion, no matter how wealthy they are. So, yeah, let's see.
I think with it, I think he'd be more. I think he's more likely to go back down if Adesanya wins the title than he is if they offer him X amount of money. Simply because I think that would irritate him. That would almost because the first thing Adesanya's going to do is call him out. The first thing people will do is question who's better. Even though Jon Jones has dominated that division for 10 years, Adesanya will say, well, I came up and I got it straight away. So I just think he'll want to go down and make a point, but maybe he won't. You never know.
I wouldn't be surprised if this is just a little bit of tactics by Jones, just to maybe make Adesanya take this fight with no real vigor, because he knows he might not be going anywhere in that division. Because he can obviously go places in that division, but he's not going to get his hands on Jones, which I think predominantly is what it's all about. I don't know. Would it take some of the spark in his training out and not perhaps take it so serious? And I don't know. Funny things happen when people talk it up, and you would imagine that Adesanya is doing it all because he wants to fight Jones at the end of the day. But if that's not going to be on the cards at that weight, would he step up to heavyweight? I don't know.
Yes, it's interesting. Looks like Nick Diaz is not going to be looking anytime soon. Sorry, I was just looking then something. So we got Logan Paul, or Jake Paul has said he thinks Logan Paul is screwed against Floyd Mayweather. I don't think that's a shock. Maybe a shock that his brother's saying it. Khabib has said the only fight he'll come out of retirement for is GSP. Which I found that really interesting. But I just wonder if GSP's got the No, I don't want to say the motivation, but like I guess I mean the motivation.
Yeah, have you not seen him though lately? He's looking absolutely shredded and ripped, and maybe there's been mutterings behind the
maybe
scenes.
he's getting ready already.
I think that this has been spoke about, and he knows this is a real possibility. I don't think he's ever really truly been out of training, has he? Okay, he's not been in fight camp, so to speak, but he's never really been out of training.
No.
And clearly, by the pictures that we're seeing, he's in incredible condition. He clearly looks after himself.
Yeah.
And this guy's a strategist. I think that's the only thing really I can put into the mix here, if my point of view is worth anything, is that GSP, okay, probably past of his physical absolute prime, but he's a well-kept human being, and he's a strategical human being. That's the difference regards anyone that's fought Khabib. Khabib's always fought someone who's really strong in one particular area. Of course, everyone's well-rounded these days, but really particularly strong in one area. But they haven't strategized very well. They're not really. They've all looked like they've underperformed predominantly. They look like they should match up with him a lot better than they do. I don't know whether it's the occasion getting better, or maybe Khabib's is just doing stuff that we just can't feel. It's invisible. It's just a presence.
It's too big, too
just
strong.
the way he just does things. Yeah, it's done on a level that people just can't have a sense for. But GSP will have a game plan. Look when he fought people like Kozhek. This is a guy that on paper was a much better wrestler, and yet Kozhek was taken down time and time again by GSP. Look at Nick Diaz. Nick Diaz, much more accomplished grappler than GSP, and yet GSP made him look stupid, and he shut him down for the fact that it was MMA. And likewise, he does this with strikers. He knows exactly how to use the whole emphasis of MMA to diminish someone's individual skill set and make it his own. He's a very, very clever individual. The things going against really GSP is the fact that, okay, he's no longer as young as he was. His face does mark up easy. And sometimes it takes two punts to beat these top fighters. If you have a look, he's lost a couple of times in his career, and he's had to come back and fight them again. And he does, and he dominates them in incredible fashion when he does get to fight them again. But I don't know, he's older, wiser. I think he'll have a really good game plan, and that's a fight I would definitely want to watch, and I imagine many other people do too. I think it will be done at lightweight. I just think GSP will look amazing at that. Man, I want to see it. Let's get that on. That'll make 221 worth it.
I do think it'll happen, I gotta say. So I was just looking at the Leon Edwards thing. So Chimaev's out. Obviously, he's got COVID. I think that's the second time he's had it, or was it Edwards who had it first time?
I think it's someone in Leon Edwards' team, wasn't it, who had it? And then someone in Kazmat's team, something along those lines. I don't know. I think we're all going to get it at some point.
So the main event has now been changed to one of the undercard fights, which was Magny versus Chiesa in a welterweight title chase. Basically, they're describing it as. That fight doesn't excite me the same way that Chimaev versus Leon Edwards does. I gotta say,
doesn't.
But
but Magny,
it's not a terrible fight.
Magny's got a good style about him. He always makes for a visual spectacle, and I think that'd be a good fight. Nevertheless, it's like watching the prelims. Sometimes the prelims have better fights than the hyped up fights that we see on the main card.
For sure. There's some interesting fights on that card as well. So you've got Roxanne Modafari versus Vivian Aroja, Tyson Nam versus Matt Schnell. I think that's a bit of a sleeper. Francisco Figueiredo versus Jerome Rivera. Mike Jackson, of course, who beat CM Punk and took a lot of criticism because he didn't go for the finish. He's fighting Dean Barry. Matt Brown is fighting Carlos Conduit. And there was another fight on there which I was really looking forward to. I can't find it. Larone Murthy versus Douglas Silva Andrade. Sorry. Looks quite interesting as well. So there's a few little fights on there. Not a card full of massive names. But,
Brown and Condit. That's an interesting matchup right there. Have they not fought before?
Interesting one.
Or
no.
Am I getting that wrong? Okay. Yeah. That because they're both predominantly past their peak, I would suggest.
Indeed.
But
So
that's so much up to some interest for me.
indeed, yeah, 100%, mate. So it's interesting because so we've got that on Wednesday the 20th. So they're back to the midweek shows. And I am delighted to say that on the 17th of January, which is the first week back, so for us it'll be that 20th when we put a show out on the 20th. We will be joined by Cage Warriors flyweight champion Jake Hadley, which I'm really looking forward to. He's going to join us. We're going to have a little chat about his 2020, talk about obviously his bout with Luke Shanks, and we'll also be talking the UFC from that weekend and any other things which pop up. You looking forward to that one, mate?
Yeah. Having Jake Hadley is going to be so interesting because we're going to get the other side of the story that we got from Luke. I train with Sam Creasy that trains with Hadley, among many other people that he trains with in that group up there, and he's always had amazing things to say about Hadley. So, to get his insight onto the perspective of the sport and how he sees the fight game, how he sees his own career going, because obviously things have opened up hugely for him. I think this guy is absolutely destined for UFC. He's been pretty damn dominant in a really gifted division. And if you look at how dominant Luke Shanks was, in the way that he took that title, and then Hadley in turn dominated Luke Shanks, the kid's obviously pretty special. So I don't think it'll be too long before we've seen this kid in the UFCs.
Yeah, 100%, mate. It's going to be real interesting, and I can safely say we're excited. So the UFC starts back up on the 16th. That's the first one. So that week, the following week after that, when we talk about that, we have Jake Hadley on. The week after that, we've got someone else on who's fought in Cage Warriors. We've never had them on before the show. And then the week after that, we've got someone who's fought in Bama, Cage Warriors, and is a current Bellator fighter who's never been on the show. And I know someone you know very, very well. He actually fought just before Christmas and won by TKO. But I don't want to curse any by naming them just yet. But Jake's all set. And what I will do is, because I didn't realise until just 30 seconds ago, that the midweek ones are back. So what I might do is I'll try and get some of the friends of the show, the likes of Ben Ellis or Aaron Khalid or Richard Shaw or some of your guys on. We'll get them on for the midweek ones as well. We might have to we might have to switch, mate. We might have to do like a live Thursday show, just did like a short 45-minute one to cover the midweek shows, because otherwise it gets a bit much. But we'll go. So last night we did have some combat sports, and it was Luke Campbell, Olympian, versus Ryan Garcia. It was Luke Campbell's first, or his hope of winning a lightweight title fight against a very good Ryan Garcia. In my opinion, I said to you just before the show, I saw a lot of British boxing fans kind of saying that Luke Campbell is going to win, and I get being hopeful. Like, I wanted Luke Campbell to win as a Brit, but I just didn't see it. Ryan Garcia is such a talented fighter. He's so good. His body punches are a sight to behold. They are brutal, and he nailed Luke Campbell with a few special ones. What did you make of the fight overall?
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed watching it. They look stylistically quite different. They were not only opposite stance, which can create some interesting issues on both sides of the game. Obviously, Campbell likes to sit behind his jab, and he likes to create his points outwardly. But Garcia, he likes to tuck in and was much more fluent. But that was really the defining difference that I saw between them both. Was one was quite stiff and rigid and very centre line dominant, and you had Garcia that was throwing in the circular shots, the hook shots. But if you have a look throughout, before that body shot Garcia landed, he kept on leading in with that left hook a lot to the head, and I think he was trying to, throughout the rounds, get Campbell's guard higher and higher and higher until that body was open in the latter rounds when he's breathing a little heavier. But yeah, only took one heavy shot to the body and he was down and he was out. But really, really good fight, to be honest. But it looked like it could have all gone wrong for him when he got knocked down in that second round. But I think maybe Luke Campbell should have perhaps put it on him a little bit more. But
yeah, after the knockdown, I thought that. I really did. I thought after that knockdown, he should have really put a bit of pressure on, Because one thing about Ryan Garcia is he's only 22. He's very, very young, particularly in a fight, in boxing terms, 22 is a baby. And I just felt like when he knocked him down, the pressure was on him then. And that was Luke Campbell's window to really, if he was going to win it, I felt like that was where he was going to win it. And he didn't really pour it on. And by the way, I'm not saying I thought Luke Campbell was very impressive last night. I thought he boxed very well. I just think Ryan Garcia is very, very talented young man. And it's just the start of his career, really. He's in the same gym as Canelo Alvarez. So, he's got some high-class training partners. Luke Campbell's 33. I think that was probably, unless they run it back, that was probably his chance for the gold. But you never know, and again, I'll say that again, just so there is no kind of mixed messages or whatever. Like, I thought Luke Campbell looked really good. I just thought Ryan Garcia looked better, basically. Luke Campbell didn't disgrace himself in any way.
No. He did perform very, very well. I just, sometimes to get the win, you've got to get everything in lineup in unison. And I just think he just missed that opportunity. I think for him to have a more completed performance, it would have been nice for him to have a good dab at putting it away. But just didn't get that sense of urgency. Now, whether he just thought it was just too soon or whether he thought that he only knocked him off balance and he hadn't hurt Garcia, I don't know. But I think maybe a younger version of Luke Campbell maybe have tried to, chomp Ryan Garcia up after that knockdown. I think, maybe that he is a little bit more seasoned, a little older, he's playing safe. But I think that went against him. I really do. And, but you got to either commend, the mature head on Garcia's young shoulders or the corner team, because Garcia come out in that third round, absolutely put it on Campbell and never give Campbell a chance for perhaps in his corner to say, hey, look, we got him hurt. This is a chance to stamp your authority on the fight. Get out there and take that next round. He really never got the space to do so. Garcia was really, really fluent in that third round and took that third round really hard off Campbell and stopped Campbell having any confidence to build off of that knockdown.
Yeah, and what you've got to remember as well, Garcia's never been past, has only twice been past 4 rounds. So his last 2 bouts have lasted less than 180 seconds in total. Right. So, when Campbell's knocked him down, that's why I feel like it was such a missed opportunity, because, Garcia's there. No, I don't say there for the taking, because I don't think it was that bad of a knockdown. But the pressure was certainly there. It was on Garcia at that point. He's never had a long fight. He's used to kind of coasting through his opponents, certainly in recent memory. So let's see what he does now when he's under pressure. And maybe Luke Campbell didn't do that enough. But that, like you say, the reaction from Garcia for such a young guy in a big title fight to get knocked down, get up, and then perform the way he did, I think is pretty special, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a boxing specialist by any stretch, but the thing was a little bit surprising. Now, maybe this is a boxing thing to do, but generally in all the combat striking systems, if you've got opposite stances, you ideally want your lead foot outside the opponent's lead foot. Now, what was a little strange about Garcia's approach was they're very, very toe-to-toe initially. They was both sort of matching each other step for step. But when Garcia was choosing to go in with that lead upper hook, he was doing it predominantly with his foot inside. He was actually sliding his foot inside. Now, whether that's because he was one delivering a shot at the point when he knew Campbell was just covering, and which makes it safer to do so, I don't know. But maybe that's what led him to being put on his ass by getting caught with that cross hand, which is obviously the risk of allowing your opponent to have their foot on the outside of yours opposite stance. Sure. I don't know whether I'm more of a boxing specialist will write in and perhaps give us the answer to that, whether that is a boxing thing to do and whether it is okay to throw hooks on the inside. I don't know. But
I have a guy. I'll send a little clip to Ben Doherty and he'll let me know. That'd be interesting. There's some boxing training and stuff, so he'll certainly tell us. But ultimately, it was a very enjoyable fight, and certainly gave us our. While we got no UFC, it gave us our combat sports fill.
Yeah, because the thing is with boxing as well, sometimes you can get real sleep fest, particularly with the heavyweights. But this wasn't. And just to say, out of all those rounds, round 5, Garcia was really incredible. He kind of looked like very Sugar Ray Leonard in style. He was so fluent with his combinations. I mean, some of the combinations were like 5, 6, 7 hit combinations. Really, he wanted to win it more. He absolutely wanted to win it more.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing as well, I just remembered someone sent in an email, or I can't remember what it was, a DM it might have been, and they said they'd like us to cover Rising in Japan, because there was one of them on over the weekend. And whilst I've only watched a couple of those shows before, and I'm familiar with one of the commentators, Showdown Joe, because he used to do a lot of MMA back in the day, and he was working for Fightful for a while. I'd be happy to cover a bit of Rising, particularly when the UFC is not on. The problem for us is being able to watch it, finding the right place to watch it. So I'm not sure where it's streamed, like in terms of if it's pay-per-view or if it's available. I know it's not on UFC Fight Pass, for instance. I don't have the Zone, and I have no desire to get it either. But we'll look into it for sure. But obviously from next week, we'll be bringing back the look at the rise of Jack Shaw. We'll be doing UFC 12. We'll have a look if there's any boxing in America. And ultimately, I don't know when Bellator's next event is. I'll have a quick look at that in a minute. But we'll find, we'll have a look and we'll do some stuff. We're also happy to answer questions that people send in and whatnot.
I think we
before you know it, it'll be the 16th again anyway. So.
Of course. Yeah, but didn't we say last week, if anyone wants to write in about,
any fights,
particular fight,
to look at,
even back from the Strikeforce days. I mean, they put on some amazing bouts, and WEC, that was another really, really good promotion that had awesome fights. We could go further back to Pride, I suppose, but then you are getting that dated version of MMA. When you look back, I think you'd be surprised how. Can you say primitive? Because they were rounded, but it was primitive. There were clear differences in level compared to today's MMA athletes.
Yeah, 100%, mate. I'm sure someone will send in a fight for us to look at, because I know there was one viewer who was going to go back and look. He was going to look at some Strikeforce fights and see if he could pick one. So we'll have that as well. We'll have a few different things to look at. But to finish us off for the last sort of 20 minutes, half hour, let's go with the UFC 11, mate. What did you make of this tournament, this show overall?
Yeah, it went back to having some really quick fights, wasn't it? Some of them didn't last even up to a minute. Either by the fighter tapping out, conceding, or the ref stepping in really, really quick. I think the highlight regards referees stepping in. I think he broke that. When McCarthy jumps in to stop, I think he forearmed across the nose of that Brian Johnson and broke his nose. I don't know whether that was actually a true fact or not, but Brian Johnson was pretty peeved off by the way he got torn off the opponent. So, but yeah, there was some quick fights. It wasn't my favourite one. I've enjoyed some of the other retro ones. There was a couple of long-winded, boring fights. And ones that were just too quick, where nothing really much happened, where the level of difference between the both athletes was huge, and it was like back in the very, very early UFCs. Yeah,
that's problematic then, isn't it, when there's such a big gap in talent or quality, ability, whatever you want to say. It can be a bit of a mismatch. I was just having a quick look to see if there was any Bellator events scheduled for the next couple of weeks. I can't find any, but I'm sure they'll be coming soon enough. It doesn't seem to be any announced. But yeah, it's only, I think, what are we? Where's the 3rd today? Next week will be the 10th, so it's the week after, really. So it's only next week. So we'll do what we discussed just now.
Sure.
Next week. Well, it's not a UFC 12 next week. It's a UFC Ultimate, which I was thinking that was one of the ones we were really looking forward to. But let's get into it. The first fight was what was it?
Mark Coleman, Julian Sanchez.
Mark Coleman, Julian Sanchez. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, Julian Sanchez did not. No, absolutely. I mean, there wasn't hardly a blow by blow in this one, was there? I mean, Mark Coleman, everyone knows Mark Coleman, a fantastic wrestler and a guy that sprinkled steroids on his cereal in the morning. It looked totally contrasting to Julian Sanchez. Julian Sanchez was a big guy, a lump of a guy, but as a skillful martial artist, no, he wasn't. And it completely showed up, really. Mark Coleman shot in, got him down with the first attempt with no resistance at all, and was quickly put into like a head and arm choke. I forget the actual name of what they call it, but you see a lot of the old school wrestlers do it, and old school catch wrestlers. He had a few punts at it, which didn't work at first, but after a few more softening blows, Sanchez soon succumbed to it and tapped for his way out. It didn't go very long in at all.
If I asked you to tell me when was the last, or what was the last, either the date or the last UFC event that Mark Coleman fought on, what would you tell me?
Crikey, he fought. Okay, so I'm going to say, was it something like 110, 115? Was it as late as that?
It was 109, UFC 109. He fought, he lost to Randy Couture. He fought Brock Lesnar, I think, at some point as well. And then he only retired 3 years ago from MMA, not from UFC.
But he's another one that, like Randy Couture, he had a heart attack a year or two ago, didn't he? And I know Mark Coleman, he's succumbed to a heart attack, unfortunately. So definitely
be no comeback in that case.
Yeah. I mean, he's so iconic. One of the successful wrestlers who used ground and pound. There was nothing beautiful about what he did. He just had that incredible wrestling, ground and pound well. He learned enough about the submission game to avoid a lot of the submission attempts. Him, Mark Kerr, that style, they're just iconic for that style. They were the ones that put the wrestling on the map, regardless of an effective system in MMA. The wrestling, it's kind of a stick in the spokes of the martial arts, isn't it? Because if you're a striker, you get taken down, get smothered. And even if you're a good jiu-jitsu practitioner, if they're bigger and stronger than you and submission aware, they kind of just smother your game and you're fighting off your back the whole time.
It was in this fight, and like once he got him down, there was no, he was never going to escape, was he? One thing it was great to see a young Big John McCarthy there refereeing, and I do love the way that he gets, like when he pushed Coleman off him, he physically just dives in there, and he establishes there. I think in these early shows that he did, he established that the referees, if needs to be, will physically get between the fighters. And I think that was a really important part of, like we've talked before about MMA to the casual fan and to the wider audience, having those referees physically get in between fighters, I think visually, for the people from the outside looking in, is probably a good thing, because it shows that the referees are not going to let fighters get injured and stuff. I don't mean for us, I mean for people who aren't familiar with MMA. I feel like that's a good visual.
Yeah, well, look, if someone's ground and pounding the granite out of somebody and a referee just goes up and sort of taps him on the back, he's not going to be aware of anything. You have to literally dive in between, because some of those stoppages are in the midst of combinations landing on the feet or predominantly on the ground in a ground and pound situation. Okay, you've obviously got submissions in that equation too, but when someone's going balls out, trying to knock someone out or finish someone off, you've got to step in damn quick, and you've got to put your body mass involved to make it decisive. And I don't think it's a bad thing that a ref should be of decent size, just in case the fighter does carry on and get too much. I mean, we have seen it. You can watch a really good compilation on YouTube of referees getting involved, physically with fighters because they were not towing the line and was not stopping. I think it's a good thing to have a strong athletic dude in there.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Next up was Brian Johnston defeating Reza Nasri via TKO strikes, 28 seconds, so even quicker than the second fight. What did you make of this very quick affair? Yeah.
If anyone knows who Brian Johnston is, the late Brian Johnston is not around no more, unfortunately. He was a jacked up, energetic, young, tenacious fighter. I've just got something come up on my thing. Sorry.
Brian Johnson.
Yeah. yeah, okay. That Nasri looked like he could do so. He looked a little bit skillful on the feet, looked well balanced, but it went down to the mat, and I think the referee stepped in on this one. I don't know whether I could see an actual tap. I didn't have very, very clear footage on the footage I was watching, but it was over just so quickly, and I don't know whether it was actually consequential strikes that were landing or whether the ref just stepped in. But I wrote it down as a referee stoppage.
I'll have a quick look now.
I've actually
on the official results. It's down as TKO.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I'll just have a look. I've got a fight.
Yeah, it was a bit unclear. It was a bit unclear to me.
Oh, he slammed him down though, didn't he?
Yeah,
really
he did.
Big takedown. I'm not sure if he's knocked out from the takedown, but he eats a couple of big shots ahead.
Shots, yeah.
Yeah, I think there was no tap. The referees. I think he's just referees just stopped it basically.
Yeah, I think they were stopping the fights a little quicker because there were still
took some
knockout
big shots,
rounds.
mind in that way.
Yeah,
you know, I think
it's because they're knockout rounds and people are either breaking their hands, laying in.
And then they
extra unneeded shots. Yeah, and I think maybe it was stopped a little earlier, so fighters are a little fresher.
But going to what you were saying, mate, about the referees needing to be able to get stuck in, like Brian Johnson was fired up and he was smashing Nasri to pieces. Like if the ref hasn't pushed him off him, he's going to keep going and going and going. He gets up and it looks like Brian Johnson had got caught just before the takedown because he's got like all blood coming out of his nose.
Well, that was what I was saying. I don't know whether because he was angry at the ref, and I don't know whether Johnson's nose got broke
by
the ref jumped in. Yeah, because he got forearmed across the face, and he was really peed off.
Broke up a bit when he was talking just about that bit. There you go. That makes sense. Yeah, I suppose. And big, John McCarthy's a big boy, isn't he? So. Yeah. You get a forearm from him, you're going to feel it.
Yeah.
Next up, Tank Abbott versus Sam Atkins. We finally got a proper fight, at least for about 2 minutes and 6 seconds. With a forearm choke is down in the official results. Tank Abbott picked up the victory. Talk to me.
Yeah. I mean, the takedown didn't take too long to get, but Sam Atkins had something to give back for a little while, but really not for long. I mean, when you look at this guy's record, he's like, what is it? It's like 20-7. Sorry, 7-20. So it's not exactly a successful fighter by any stretch. But he had a little bit more resistance in him. But how unusual to be submitted with a forearm choke. You don't see many of those. Although there was one in sort of recent times, wasn't there? An unusual forearm choke. We covered one in UFC, didn't we? Yeah, really, really rare. And it's really but that. Not something. I mean, you would probably see it predominantly back then, but really unusual to get that sort of finish. But then again, look, Tank Abbott's a big, heavy, solid dude. I suppose him pressing on the side of your face and neck is going to be enough for you to tap out and see another day. Yeah, another one that didn't last long. A couple of minutes in, and it was all over.
Yeah. Sorry, mate. My wife just texted me about my young child who's not very well. It's. I just had a quick look to see if there was who it was. Alexander Romanov pulled off a forearm choke at UFC Vegas 13 recently, versus Marcus Rojo de Lima in the first round in the little used forearm choke.
Yeah.
Good that's good memory, that is, mate. We watched so many fights, they all blend into one.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't start hitting you with the names, as you know. I struggle remembering the names of my own family, but that did stand out because I know it's a rare submission to pull off. It's actually one of my favourite submissions to do, pressing down on with the old forearm when I grapple people. So beware anyone that comes down.
Indeed. So next up, we had the last bout of the quarterfinals, which was Jerry Bolander versus Fabio Gurgel. This one went to decision, which is unusual at this time in the UFC. Full 15 minutes, with Bolander picking up the victory via unanimous decision.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry Bolander was one of the first sort of like complete fighters. He actually had skills in all areas, could wrestle somewhat. He had some grappling capabilities and had decent enough striking as well. Fabio Gurgel, as we know, is a very, very accomplished, like 4 times world jiu-jitsu champion. The only issue I ever had watching Fabio Gurgel, because I'm a massive fan of his grappling, I've really enjoyed his jiu-jitsu over the years, but was the fact that he settles to fight off his back. And he's skillful enough to stop anyone being able to ground and pound him extensively. But as you get wet and sweaty, as long as someone's athletic and aware of those submissions, you can sort of avoid that one-dimensional jiu-jitsu, which they had back then. I mean, now they've got more clever ways about going things. We've got leg locks brought into the occasion. You've got the new rubber guard that's, brought into the occasion to funk up fighting off your back. Fabio Gurgel had no such flair to his game back then, as that sort of thing didn't exist. He did have a punt at a triangle and so on, but Bolander easily shrugged it off and went into some ground and pounds. But the fight very, very quickly had a pattern, and that was that Fabio Gurgel was predominantly trying to play counter, hunting for a submission or a sweep that never really come his way. And Bolander just looking, well-rounded, and it deserved that he got the win.
Just a bit too good, wasn't he, in the end, I think?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Too well-rounded, too aware.
So we had the semi-final of Mark Coleman versus Brian Johnston and Scott Ferroso versus Tank Abbott, because Scott Ferroso had to step in for... Who was it? Not Brian Johnston, Mark Coleman.
For Mark
Jerry Boland.
Bolander,
yeah. So Scott Ferroso stepped in for Jerry Bolander because let's have a look. So Ferroso replaced Bolander, who was unable to continue in the tournament due to fatigue and a cut above his eye.
Right.
Ferroso was unable to. Okay, well, I'll tell you that bit. Yeah. And this became a bit of a farce in the final, as we'll discuss in a minute. So you had the alternate. So the semi-finals were Mark Coleman versus Brian Johnston, with Mark Coleman picking up the win via submission strikes, 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
Yeah, again, nothing really beautiful. Mark Coleman just doing what Mark Coleman does. Johnston was able to create some scrambling possibilities once he was taken down, and really needed to keep it on the feet and try and work the leg kicks, which we've seen at later dates that works really, really well. I think Bolander beat Mark Coleman in later UFC, landing leg kicks on him.
Yes.
Sort of picked him apart. And that's kind of what you got to do. Mark Coleman, being a wrestler without any real true striking capabilities on his feet, are very, very flat-footed. And you could take advantage of that by targeting the legs. But it didn't. He got put on his back way, way too early, really. And with that kind of energy that Mark Coleman still had, being that he didn't really have a fight that went any particular distance beforehand, was able to put brutal enough ground and pound in for a KO and TKO stoppage.
Yeah, for sure. I thought I quite enjoyed it for only 2 minutes and 20 seconds. It was pretty enjoyable fight between the two of them. Coleman looked good, though, I got to say.
Yeah, he did. He did.
And then, maybe in a bit of a shock, I suppose, I don't know if you'd say so, but Scott Ferroso defeated Tank Abbott by a unanimous decision.
Yeah. This was just like looking two potato characters and fighting it out in the cage. I mean, not to be disrespectful to them, because they both do come to fight. We all know about Tank Abbott. He was always there to fight. Not exactly, a pioneer of athleticism in MMA. It looks like he should be going in there with a beer bottle in his hand, and I can bet you, I can bet you a lot of money that he had a beer in his hand not long after each fight UFCs that he ever competed in. I know he was straight to the bar thereafter. Scott Ferroso, this guy is actually quite effective. He can wrestle. He's super aggressive, and for a lump of a guy, for the guy with very, very similar physique as Sam Atkins, really has got a bit of cardio about him. He can do a burst of explosion and keep that going throughout a long, drawn-out fight. So what I really initially saw here was Tank Abbott being more aggressive with the hands, able to sort of out-wrestle in terms of getting Ferroso up against the fence. Yeah. But up against the fence, once Tank Abbott began to gas a little bit, he was just using the fence grab to pin him up against the fence. But what did impress me regards what Scott Ferroso was doing was those knees. A couple of those knees was lifting Tank Abbott off the ground and maybe helped what gassed Tank Abbott out and stopped Tank Abbott being so aggressive like we know he potentially can. It did get a little frustrating to watch, because they would get space between them. They would throw a few bombs, and Tank would drive him up against the fence.
Yeah.
We kind of had the repeated performance each time. Ferroso was really trying to go for the win, though. He's trying to obviously be devastating with those knees. He was hitting the back of the head, trying to create knockouts, but that wasn't working for him. So he was also trying to pull Tank Abbott's head down for some attempts at guillotines and maybe to come off the fence and do like a head and arm drag, try and get it into a grounded situation with him on top. But Tank Abbott was just too savvy for that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like I say, it began to get a little bit repetitive, but it had its moments. You won't see two fighters looking like that. Fighting each other this day and age, you really won't.
No, you will not. So that was it for the big, and we'll tell you why. So from those semi-finals, the final was Mark Coleman versus Scott Ferroso. However, Scott Ferroso was injured, could not continue. He was already an alternate himself. There was one other alternate, which was Robert Traverton. However, he broke his hand during his alternate match. So the championship was given to Mark Coleman via forfeit. So it was quite a historic UFC pay-per-view for some not so great reasons. It featured an 8-man tournament as well as the 2 alternate bouts in case there was an injury. In my opinion, they probably shouldn't have done the alternate bouts because they didn't need to, because you just risk injuries to the alternates. They should have just had them there. But equally, it's unfair to them to jump in.
Fresh. Yeah. Because you had that with Steve Jenham in the previous UFC, in UFC 3, was it? Steve Jenham come in and... but mind you, I don't know whether he did have a fight. Maybe he had a fight.
Well, someone won
but
it,
he was fresh anyway.
They were all an alternate in one of them, and they came in the final fresh as a daisy, and the other guy fought 2 guys.
Yeah, so I do get
fights as
alternates, but look, doing tournaments like that is just not a good idea. Yeah, it's not going to run smooth. It's like,
especially back then when the fighters weren't as fit and they weren't as physically fit. They didn't have the stamina. They weren't as technically good, which meant that they weren't hiding behind their jab. They were taking damage and giving damage. So due to multiple injuries and fatigue, there was no alternates left to continue after the semi-final matches. As I mentioned, Robert Travan had a broken hand after his alternate match. Championship was won by forfeit. Rich Goins returned as the ring announcer for this show. The event did a buy rate of 92,000. Was one of the least purchased events for the UFC in history. It was, and this was not long after they brought, because so in UFC 10 they brought back the tournament format for the first time in a while. So this was like the second one after that. This was the one. This was the first and only UFC tournament to end by a default, and due to Mark Coleman winning by default and the vast amount of short matches, the pay-per-view was called Incomplete, Disorganized by viewers. Igor Vorchakchin was invited to fight at UFC 11, but he could not participate due to visa issues, as well as a dissatisfaction with the monetary offer. So this one sounds like it was plagued with issues, mate.
Yeah, it doesn't sound too clever, and that was really the thing. It looked like they were trying to run events when certain inevitable hiccups were going to happen. They had no real logical means of solving it. But anything that's going to go through evolutionary process for something that's new is, I suppose, you're going to have those sort of headache issues. But look what it become. With a bit of perseverance, we've got the kind of UFC that we got today.
Yes, but I mean, and you talk about the evolution of it all. The next event which we're going to cover is the Ultimate, or UFC 11.5, and this is another interesting one because in the run-up to this, Ken Shamrock appeared on Late Night with Conan O'Brien, on the mainstream NBC network in America to promote the event, which was widely considered quite groundbreaking for a sport so young at the time. And, the UFC was trying to legitimize everything and be up there with boxing. Mark Coleman was originally scheduled to fight in the tournament, but was forced to withdraw due to a virus. So I'll go through some of the people who did feature, because it is this was going to be this was billed basically as the best of the best of the best, because it's supposed to be the best of the best anyway, isn't it? So the alternate bouts, Mark Hall, Felix Mitchell, Steve Nelmark, Marcus Bosset, Ty Bowden, and Jack Nielsen. One of those fights ends via submission to headbutts. So that'll be interesting. Unfortunately, we don't always get to see the alternates, which is a shame. The tournament's made up of Ken Shamrock, Brian Johnson, Tank. This is the first round. Shamrock Johnston, Tank Abbott versus Cal Worsham, Don Fry versus Gary Goodridge, and Kimo Lepaldo versus Paul Valerians. Now that's a bit more like it.
There's some
interesting
big names from the past right there.
Some big dudes there, mate, as well. I tell you, there's some big dudes. Isn't Kimo Lepaldo? He's that one. It was wasn't he like a film guy as well? Am I mixing him up with someone else?
He's a former coach in the UFC where he fought and lost to Hoyce. And his coach name was Joson. And Joson went on to fight Keith Hackney, and he was receiving the groin punches from Keith Hackney. He became a film star, or not a star, but he was featuring in films. But now I think he's a lifer in prison. I think he killed a man.
That's
he was
right,
involved in bad things.
Yeah, he was like Joson was like he was like. What was he in? He was in something, wasn't he? Like a UFC.
Yeah, he was in a fairly
big films, wasn't he?
And, but I think he was in for something quite
wasn't he
small.
in James Bond or something like that?
Quite possibly, yeah. But I know that if I'm correct, I'd have to really research it on Wikipedia.
Yeah, he was Odd Job in one of the James Bond films. I thought he was.
Yeah, but
it's massive, isn't it?
Didn't he get put in prison for something trivial, like something quite small? I mean, not quite shoplifting, but maybe like a car offence or something like that. And then he killed someone in prison. It was something along those lines. But it's quite an interesting story about him, anyway.
Because he was a coach, wasn't he? And then he got into an argument, didn't he, when he was coach? And then the following year, he fought the person he had an argument. And I remember Joe Sondo. They used to go by. So let's have a look. Yeah, so he was odd job in not James Bond. I mixed that up. It was best known for his role in 1997 movie Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery, as Random Task, which was a parody of James Bond's character Odd Job. Right, that's where I got mixed up. Previously, Sennett appeared in several low-budget action films, The Joshua Tree, Blood Fist. Just some sort of B-movie kind of like, all those ones where there's like a lot of fight to the death and shoot fighters and stuff like this.
Yeah.
His MMA record is 0-14.
Right.
Which is
great fighter.
Interesting. Yeah. So let's have a look at that's what we were looking at, wasn't it? It was his criminal convictions. So he pleaded guilty to felony vandalism in 2008 when he was sentenced to probation and 60 days. On August the 18th, a month later, he was taken into custody and given an additional 90 days in jail due to a violation of his probation. As a condition of his original plea agreement, he had to give a DNA sample, and then in early October, his DNA was linked to a 1990 Christmas Eve gang rape.
Wow.
Already in custody for the probation violation, he was arrested and was charged by California for the gang rape, and he was charged with all sorts of horrific stuff, by the way. Stuff I wouldn't necessarily talk about by here, but
it gets pretty bad. I'm just reading down.
Jesus
I
Christ.
did read this back along, and I know it's not good.
Oof. He was sentenced to a maximum. It tells you how bad it was, and some of the stuff that was involved. He was faced a maximum sentence of 275 years to life.
He will not be seeing daylight again.
Yeah,
I'll say that.
Jesus Christ.
And when you look down at what he's done, no wonder. He's a pretty bad dude.
Jesus Christ, that's horrible. Well, that's ruined the show, Danny. Thanks for that. Thanks for making.
No. Don't mention anyone down. But the bit about him killing someone. He was accused of killing a cellmate.
Oh yeah, he killed a cellmate in 2011. Yeah.
Who was a convicted sex offender after what we read about him. I mean,
which is ironic in itself, isn't it? Oh well. Yeah. Yeah. So Joe Son, nice guy. Fuck. Right.
Not.
Yes, indeed. So next week, UFC 11.5. We will also be discussing Jack Shaw. We'll have a look where we are in the rise of Jack Shaw, because we're in the middle of going through different Jack Shaw fights as his rise towards the UFC.
Sure.
And we'll also have a look. If no one sends us a fight they'd a boxing or an MMA fight they'd like us to watch, we'll come up with one. We'll pick one ourselves.
Yeah, you should pick one. I'll pick one, and it'd be great to review something.
Indeed, of course we'll talk to the latest news and all that sort of stuff. But a nice, quick, sharp, short show just to keep us in your minds. If you do have any questions or anything, of course, you can always send them in to at Danny Batten FS on Instagram or Twitter, or you can email ace network contact@gmail.com or message any of the Ace Podcast Nation social media pages. Send in those questions. We'll always be happy to answer them. In the meantime, though, we're just building up for the UFC season to start again on the 16th, and then we'll be back twice a week for a few weeks. So be sure to catch us. In the meantime, Danny, it's been a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah, it's good to start off the new year with your site, and bring it on. Bring on the UFCs. Can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Got some cracking guests coming up and some cracking shows to cover. It's going to be amazing. In the meantime, we bid you a farewell. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. That helps us a lot. The best way to support us. In the meantime, bid you farewell.
Defending champion, welcome, Danny Batten.
You're listening to Ace Podcast Nation, the hottest new podcast network and YouTube channel in the UK, featuring original series, top guests, expert analysts, and more. Check out facebook.com/AceCast Nation for news on latest guests and shows. Watch every show in full at youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation.